Let's run a quick thought experiment. Uh, Normally, when you evaluate just an everyday object, your judgment relies entirely on this fairly brutal binary math based on its utility.
Right, like, does it do the thing it was made to do?
Exactly. A coffee cup is meant to hold liquid. A chair is meant to hold your weight. So if the cup leaks everywhere, or the chair splinters when you sit on it, the math fails. The object is garbage. You just throw it away.
Yeah, it's a purely functional relationship. I mean, it does the job it was created for, or it completely ceases to have value.
But then you take that exact same broken, leaking cup, and you don't throw it away. Instead, you put it on a pristine white pedestal inside a perfectly quiet, brightly lit gallery in downtown Manhattan.
Mm.
Suddenly, the math breaks down entirely.
Oh, completely.
The cup isn't garbage. It's a priceless masterpiece.
Which is fascinating because, the object hasn't changed at all. The molecules are identical, but the context has shifted so violently that the flaw, that inability to hold water, suddenly becomes the entire point. You're forced to contemplate why it's broken.
Which forces us to ask the most notoriously slippery, debate-inducing question in human history. I mean, it's a question that has ruined dinner parties, baffled philosophers, and sparked literal shouting matches in royal courts. What actually is art?
It is a massive question.
It really is. So today's deep dive is dedicated to unpacking that exact question. We're looking at a wildly eclectic stack of material for you today, from medieval philosophical treatises to the history of a megalomaniacal Russian composer, and even a few fantastical parables involving dragons and squabbling monarchs.
It is quite the reading list.
Definitely. Okay, let's unpack this, because by the time we are done, you might fundamentally rethink how you look at a history book, a music festival, or even your own mistakes.
Yeah, and we really have to start at the bottom, I think, with the physical objects themselves before we can get to the mind-bending stuff.
I agree, because before we can talk about the grand reality-altering power of art, we need to look at a very petty, very human domestic dispute about what even qualifies as art to begin with. There's this story in the material about Queen Boudica and King Helig.
Oh, I love this one. It is a phenomenal illustration of the broken cup problem.
So picture the scene. You have Queen Boudica proudly presenting a clay vase to her husband, King Helig. Now, this vase is an absolute disaster.
Complete mess.
Yeah, it is warped, it is crumpled in on itself, it absolutely cannot stand up straight, let alone hold a single drop of water. But Boudica presents it to him with absolute reverence. She claims it is an expression of life itself, crafted by an acclaimed sculptor named Mr. Banks.
And King Halig, he's a practical guy. He's looking at this lumpy piece of clay, and he's deeply skeptical. He's searching for a baseline standard, so he asks her, does this resemble any of the kingdom's fine art?
Right, he wants to measure it against things they already agree possess value.
Exactly. But Boudica's way ahead of him. She completely flips the script. She just crosses her arms and asks him, but my dear liege, what is art?
Which is such a trap.
Oh, total trap. She knows he can't answer it. So while Helig is stammering, trying to invent a definition of art on the spot, this diplomat named Reynolds steps in to mediate the situation.
Good old Reynolds.
Right. And Reynolds takes the subjective, philosophical route. He argues that art completely transcends rational explanation. Its meaning, he says, is shaped entirely by individual experience. And he drops this brilliant line. He says, one man's masterpiece is another's thrift.
Which is a beautiful democratic sentiment. But here's the punchline. After the king finally gives up in frustration and leaves the room, Reynolds whispers to the queen and asks if she dropped the vase.
I love this part.
And Boudica secretly admits that she dropped it not once, but 3 times on the way to the kiln. She just laughs and says, art is all about expectations.
It's hilarious, but it exposes the central tension we always run into. There's actually a companion story in the text about a poet named Thimble who writes a poem that completely fails to rhyme.
Oh, right, the non-rhyming poem.
Yeah, and when someone criticizes him for it, Thimble gets incredibly defensive and shoots back, does the song of the soul a pine in pentameter?
I do love that line. It
Yeah.
perfectly captures that feeling of walking through a modern art museum. You see like a fire extinguisher on the wall, and you have to stop and genuinely wonder, is this a profound, layered commentary on the extinguishing of human passion? Or is it literally just building safety equipment?
You really never know sometimes.
Right.
Huh.
But I have to push back on Boudica and Thimble here. Because if a dropped, ruined vase is art just because we expect it to be, or a non-rhyming poem is art just because the soul doesn't speak in strict meter, doesn't that mean literally everything is art?
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah, because if everything is art, doesn't the word completely lose all meaning?
I see why you jumped to that, definitely. But think about what happens to King Halig during that argument. While he's debating this crumpled vase, he looks around his grand ancient castle, and he sees these soaring, incredibly intricate woven tapestries and these massive carved stone pillars, and he realizes something really uncomfortable. What he considers fine art in his current era was almost certainly debated as mere craft or just functional architecture a few centuries earlier.
Oh, wow. So the distinction isn't in the object at all.
It never was.
Okay, so if it's not the physical perfection and it's not the utility, what makes the tapestry art while the vase is just garbage?
It's the presence and attention we grant it. When you place that broken cup on a pedestal, or when Boudica presents that ruined vase to a king, you are commanding the viewer to pay attention to it in a highly specific, elevated way.
Okay, I think I'm tracking.
Yeah, so art isn't a physical property of the object itself. It's a property of the interaction between the object and you, the observer.
I struggle with that a little bit, though. Because if art is purely an interaction, what happens if you have, say, a breathtaking centuries-old painting, but it's locked in a billionaire's subterranean vault where absolutely no one can see it or interact with it?
Yeah.
Are you saying it ceases to be art in the dark?
According to the philosophical framework in the text we're looking at, yes, absolutely.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it becomes an incomplete circuit. A battery sitting in a drawer isn't powering anything. This shifts our entire understanding from what art is to what art does. There's actually a great narrative in the text that perfectly illustrates this mechanism. It involves a couple of travelers named Sam and Emily and a dragon named Smedley.
Right, the story with the chimera figurine.
That's the one.
So Sam acquires this deeply mysterious little carved figurine. It's a chimera, this bizarre amalgamation of all these different creatures. And Sam is just obsessing over it. He's turning it over and over in his hands, assuming it's a riddle.
He's trying to figure out its utility.
Exactly. He thinks there's a secret to be exposed, a hidden latch or some functional purpose he just needs to decode.
Because that is our default evolutionary setting. When we encounter an unknown object, our brain immediately tries to categorize it as either a tool or a threat. We demand utility. We want a problem to solve.
Right, we want to know what it does for us. But Smedley the dragon, who obviously possesses a much longer, non-human perspective, he just watches Sam struggle and gives him this casual, knowing look.
The classic dragon look.
Yeah, and that look triggers a realization. Sam stops, looks at his friend Emily, and says, what if it's not a secret? What if it's simply a toy? A piece of art?
And the moment he says that, the tension in the room just completely evaporates. The whole need to solve the object vanishes.
Because it doesn't need to be solved.
Exactly. Emily realizes that every time someone new holds the figurine and examines it, a new conversation starts. It's like a folk song passed from person to person. The original melody is there, but each singer adds their own unique inflection and history to it.
Okay, so art basically functions as a social lubricant, or a shared ecology.
Shared ecology is a great way to put it.
It's not a noun sitting on a shelf waiting to be deciphered. It's a verb. It's the active process of bringing people into a shared space, starting a dialogue, and forcing us to look at the world through a communal lens.
And this brings us to a really critical concept in the text. There's a specific term used to describe this exact phenomenon. The word is symphoria.
Symphoria.
Yeah, it is defined as a resonance of shared direction, a purpose held in common without coercion.
Purpose held in common without coercion. I really like that. But what does that actually look like in practice, like day to day?
Think about the difference between a traffic jam and a concert.
Okay.
In a traffic jam, thousands of people are sharing a space, but it's completely coerced. Everyone is trapped. There's no shared resonance, just mutual frustration.
Lots of mutual frustration, yeah.
But in a gallery or around a piece of art, people gather voluntarily. They focus their attention on one specific point. Symphoria is the psychological reality that when multiple minds willingly focus on an object, they create a temporary microculture. The figurine is literally just a chunk of carved wood until Sam, Emily, and Smedley gather around it and allow it to spark that shared, unforced experience.
That makes a lot of sense. The art is the gravitational pull that briefly aligned everyone's orbit. But, if art's true nature is its ability to synchronize minds and shift our collective perspective, it really makes me wonder about the limits of that power.
How far it can go.
Right. Has there ever been a creator who looked at that shared resonance and tried to weaponize it? What happens when an artist tries to push that gravitational pull to the absolute, terrifying extreme?
Well, then you get the historical reality of Alexander Scriabin.
Oh, Scriabin. We're taking a hard pivot here from fantastical dragons to early 20th century Russia.
That's quite a jump.
Calling Alexander Scriabin an ambitious composer is like calling a hurricane a light breeze. The guy didn't just want to write a symphony, he wanted to write a piece of music called the Mysterium.
Yeah, Scriabin was utterly obsessed with an idea that goes far beyond traditional art. He wanted to revive what the texts call the theurgic function of ancient mystery plays.
Wait, the urgic function? Meaning he thought music was literally a form of magic, that playing the right notes could alter physical matter.
Exactly. Theurgy is essentially the practice of rituals meant to invoke the action of gods, or, in Scriabin's view, manipulate the very fabric of the universe.
That is wild.
To him, this wasn't magic, it was spiritual physics. He figured if you believe that all matter is essentially just vibrating energy, then theoretically, if you find the exact right frequencies, the right combination of sensory inputs, you can break down the molecular bonds of reality itself.
So he believed art shouldn't just represent the world. It should actively change it, literally.
Yes.
And his logistical plan for pulling this off was completely insane. He envisioned this continuous 7-day and 7-night ritual, but he wasn't going to do this in a concert hall in Moscow or Paris. No, he wanted to build a specially designed hemispherical temple in the foothills of the Himalayas.
And he was so committed to this, he actually purchased a plot of land in Darjeeling to build it.
That is dedication to the bit. And the performance itself, I mean, we aren't talking about a standard orchestra. The Mysterium was supposed to feature a completely new, invented language based on Sanskrit that consisted entirely of precise sighs and breaths.
Just incredibly elaborate.
There were going to be massive columns of incense, intricate light shows that corresponded to specific musical notes, and this is my absolute favorite detail, giant bells suspended from the clouds.
Suspended from the clouds. He called it a tactile symphony. What he was trying to achieve was a hypnoidal experience. He wanted to synthesize every single human's sense, sound, smell, touch into one overwhelming sensory overload.
To what end, though?
The goal was to completely break down the audience's ego and their sense of individual self.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the end goal of this 7-day Himalayan sensory bombardment wasn't just, a standing ovation.
Yeah, definitely not.
Scriabin genuinely believed that the sheer force of this symphoria, this hyper-focused shared resonance, would cause the temple walls to crumble. He believed it would literally dematerialize the physical bodies of all the participants, effectively end the world as we know it, and birth a completely new, spiritually elevated human race.
It is the ultimate expression of art as a verb, a literal cosmic transfiguration through sound and light.
It sounds like going to a modern music festival, but the closing act isn't a fireworks display, it's the literal physical dissolution of the universe.
But if you look at the underlying logic of what he was doing, Scriabin's vision, while completely megalomaniacal, understood a fundamental truth about the nature of art that our earlier stories hinted at.
Which is what?
He eventually realized a massive flaw in his plan. You can't just perform a world-ending ritual at people.
Right. If they're just sitting in the dark, politely clapping, it's just a show.
Precisely. They are witnesses, not participants. The circuit isn't closed. Scriabin developed a deep distaste for what he called fake theatricality. He knew the Mysterium would fail if the audience remained passive.
So the observer has to be fundamentally implicated in the act.
Yes. So he actually started composing a prefatory action, this massive 3-hour prequel to the Mysterium, whose entire purpose was just to prepare the audience, to break down their defenses so they would be ready to actively participate when the world-ending music began.
He knew that for art to actually alter reality, the boundary between the creator, the performance, and the observer has to completely dissolve.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the most unsettling, mind-bending conclusion in our source material. That boundary you think exists between you and the story, it doesn't actually exist.
Right. The line we draw between ourselves and the world we are observing is just a convenient psychological illusion.
There is a piece of metafiction in the texts that illustrates this perfectly, and I have to say, it is genuinely terrifying if you think about it too long.
Oh, the rogue writing story.
Yes. So there's a story where a reader, who is referred to as the narrator, is reading a book, but he gets a little bored, so he starts skimming the pages, skipping ahead. And suddenly, the psychological horror kicks in. He realizes the characters inside the book, Oscar and Linda, have stopped their normal dialogue and are actively changing their lines to mock him for skimming.
It's so creepy. They complain about his eyes darting all over the page. They start criticizing his attention span. At one point, the characters even steal dialogue from the real people standing next to the narrator in the physical world and weave it into the text.
It is a total hostile collapse of the fourth wall. And the book delivers this incredibly chilling line to the reader. It says, "Knowing is the first betrayal of any good secret. Reading makes you accountable. You are no longer a witness. You are a participant."
It forces you to realize that observation is not a neutral act. The moment you perceive the art perceives you. You are implicated. You cannot walk away unchanged.
And this exact philosophy is mirrored in a very different context in another text we're looking at, featuring the monks of Northmoor Abbey.
Right, the story with Brother Renier, Edric, and Prior Legati.
Exactly.
Legati is a prior who deeply understands the terrifying weight of narrative. He's talking to a young, idealistic scribe, and he explains that history, the actual recording of events, isn't about archiving sterile, objective facts.
What does he say?
He tells the scribe, "The world you walk in is already a story someone else told. Your only choice is whether to tell a better one."
Okay, I have to throw a flag on the play here, because this sounds incredibly dangerous.
Oh, so?
Well, if everything we experience, even our history, our recorded facts, is just a narrative we are participating in, doesn't that completely destroy the concept of objective truth? Are we just living in a collective hallucination where whoever tells the most compelling story wins reality?
It's a very valid fear, and honestly, it's the danger of pure relativism. But Legati provides a brilliant, nuanced defense against that in the text. He doesn't say truth doesn't exist. He tells the scribe truth survives distortion. It passes through human mouths the way light passes through stained glass. Changed in color, yes, but still light.
Changed in color, but still light. That is a stunning way to frame it.
Think about the mechanics of stained glass. If you stare directly into the sun, you go blind. The raw, objective truth of reality is often too chaotic, too overwhelming, or too traumatic to process directly.
Right, you need a filter.
Exactly. Art, narrative, and storytelling are the stained glass. They don't destroy the light, they filter it. They give it shape and color so we can actually look at it, process it, and understand our place within it. The texts boil this down to a core philosophical maxim. To be conducted is to conduct.
Let me make sure I'm grasping the mechanics of that. To be conducted is to conduct, meaning by witnessing the art, by allowing the light to pass through you, allowing the music to move you, you aren't just absorbing it. You are simultaneously pushing that energy back out into the world. Your reaction shapes the reality around you.
Exactly. You aren't just sitting in the audience watching the symphony. You are in the orchestra. The symphony is playing itself through your active listening.
Wow. We have covered a massive amount of philosophical ground today. I mean, we started with the Queen attempting to pass off a crumpled, ruined clay vase as a masterpiece purely through the power of expectation.
From there, we watched a dragon help a human realize that a mysterious chimera figurine wasn't a puzzle to decode, but a mechanism for shared resonance, a way to build a microculture.
And then we explored the ultimate extreme of that resonance with Alexander Scriabin, who truly believed that if he could synthesize enough sensory input and force an audience into active participation, he could literally dissolve the material universe.
Which is still hard to wrap your head around.
Seriously. And finally, we confronted the uncomfortable truth that whether you're reading a mocking novel that watches you back or studying the history of monks, observation is participation. You are never just a witness.
Never.
Which brings us to the final concept hidden in the source text. It comes from an Elven glossary, of all places. The word is Vanamaliar.
Vanamaliar, yeah. It translates roughly to the patchwork loom.
What does that mean in the context of everything we've discussed today?
It describes the specific act of creating beauty from loss. It's the transformative process of taking broken pieces, shattered lives, or unresolved trauma, and actively interweaving them into a resilient patchwork of shared purpose.
You know, it sounds a lot like kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery.
It's exactly like kintsugi. But let's look at why kintsugi is so powerful. When you repair a bowl with gold lacquer, you aren't trying to hide the fact that it broke. You are explicitly highlighting the scars.
You're drawing attention to the flaw.
Right. The philosophy is that surviving damage and being put back together makes the object more complex, more storied, and inherently more valuable than a pristine piece that has never known friction.
The flaw becomes the point, just like the broken cup on the pedestal we started with at the beginning of the show.
Precisely. If art is fundamentally about taking raw, chaotic material, the blinding light we talked about, and filtering it into shared meaning, then the ultimate application of this isn't just in art galleries or Himalayan temples.
Right.
It's in how you view your own life. Look at your unresolved tensions, look at the mistakes, the pain, and the literal crumpled vases you've dropped along the way.
Are they just random, meaningless flaws that ruin the math of your life? Or are they simply unshaped raw material? Because if to be conducted is to conduct, then you are the stained glass. The light is waiting for you to give it color. The broken pieces are just waiting for you, the ultimate artist of your own reality, to weave them into your masterpiece.
That's the real power of art.
It really is. So keep finding the art in the noise, keep listening, keep questioning, and as always, keep diving deep.